Everyday Life with Guardsmares, Chapter 19. Honor Bound's point of view.
Reporting for duty, sir.
Turning his head, Anonymous welcomed Honor Bound with a slight smile. Hello again, Corporal. Enjoy your lunch?
Yes, sir.
Shutting the door, she took up her appointed position in front of it. Corporal Honor Bound assumed her duty as bodyguard to the very important pony, who isn't actually a pony, Anonymous, by appointment to their Majesties Princess Celestia and Princess Luna, the Royal Engineer of Equestria. It was a little after 1 o'clock on Sunday, and Corporal Honor Bound had just returned from her lunch break. Anonymous was sitting on the sofa, his back to the door, with a glass of water in one hand and the day's newspaper in the other. And there was something that had been gnawing at Honor's mind ever since yesterday's battle in New Stirrup Bridge.
Could I have a moment of your time, sir?
Her VIP twisted around again to face her. Yes, Corporal? Is there a problem? Honor closed her eyes and took a deep breath, before exhaling through her nose and opening her eyes as she started.
I wanted to apologize for my actions yesterday.
Anonymous lifted an eyebrow as she spoke.
You relied on me to make the correct decision regarding the Pari Sabot, and I let you down by making the wrong choice. I want to apologize for the incident, and it won't happen again.
Anonymous let the paper drop into his lap and turned around even more, draping his arm on the back of the sofa. Are you second-guessing yourself, Corporal, just as I was doing yesterday? That's a slippery slope to fall down. She shook her head.
It's not a guess, sir. Opting to fight was the wrong decision, and without your intervention, we would have lost the battle.
What makes you so certain?
My own observations during the fight. Both Specialist Sparkshower and Specialist Glamour Spear have said so as well.
I see. I take it there was some discussion that occurred upstairs after we returned to the palace last night. Some discussion was a technically correct summary of Sparkshower and Glamour Spear yammered away at each other about the battle until the early hours of the morning.
There was, sir.
Well, Corporal, I'm afraid I can't accept your apology. The Royal Engineer put down his drink and stood up, facing her. Shrugging his shoulders, he casually slipped his hands into the pockets of his trousers. Because I don't understand what you're apologizing for. You won, just like you said you would. Where's the failure? It didn't come as a surprise to her that the Royal Engineer would want to dig into the root of the matter.
Sir, I made the decision to fight without taking into account the fact that Sparkshower had no experience in one-on-one aerial duels, or the fact that Glamour Spear was not trained as a solo anti-air unit.
Anonymous stepped around from behind the couch and walked up in front of her. When you made the decision, did you even know those facts, Corporal?
I did not, sir. I realized them only afterwards.
Her VIP shrugged his shoulders again and shook his head. Then what are you apologizing for? You made the decision with incomplete information. It's only natural that the decision might have been wrong.
As the leader of your bodyguard detail, sir, it's my job to know the abilities of the soldiers under my leadership. I failed you in that duty.
You've known Glamour Spear and Sparkshower for a long time, then?
No, sir. We met just before Lieutenant Violetta presented us all to you.
Honor Bound's mind drifted back to less than a week ago when this assignment started. It was supposed to involve guarding a cult who sat in his office and did paperwork all day, not squaring off against Equestria's finest air duelists. That doesn't seem to me like very long at all, but if you think you should have known, then I'll accept your apology for that.
I do, sir. Thank you.
Anonymous nodded. Alright, then it's settled. Apology accepted. Honor returned the gesture in thanks, and the Royal Engineer stepped away from her, over to the wall mirror beside the doors and leaned in to inspect himself. Brushing some crumbs off of his cuffs, he adjusted his cravat. I should apologize as well, Corporal Bound. Satisfied with his appearance, he glanced over at her. Perhaps I made it seem like your choice was between fighting or handing over a hostage. But if you'd said no to battle, my next question was going to be whether you thought Sparkshower would be safe. And if you'd answered no once again, we would have simply turned around and come back. The Royal Engineer turned and looked over at the large lighthouse clock in the center of the room. Inside its glass bell was the marking time as 2:15. I wasn't gonna hoof over one pony for abuse while trying to investigate another for corruption. He turned to face her once more. If I made you think otherwise, then I apologize, and shall endeavor to be clearer in the future.
That's good to hear, sir. Thank you.
As he walked back to the sofa, there was a quiet knock on the door behind her. She turned and pulled open one of the doors just a crack. A colt dressed in an elegant red jacket and wearing a stern expression stood facing her on the other side.
Mr. Mustang is here to see the Royal Engineer.
Honor nodded and shut the door to address her VIP.
Sir, Mr. Mustang is here to see you.
Anonymous, halfway into sitting back down, stood up again. Oh, good. Please, let him in. Turning back to the door, Honor depressed the handles and allowed both doors to swing wide open. The same colt came walking in, accompanied by 2 mares and another colt, all wearing a matching set of uniforms that made them look like bellhops at a fancy hotel. But their heavy sabots and the soft clinking of metal bands sewn into their clothing made it clear that they were the bodyguards of some pony very important. Not unlike yesterday, she got the feeling that she'd just been ambushed by an imposing force.
Wait, Mr. Mustang? Oh, Anonymous, it is good to see you again.
Mr. Mustang, it's been too long. The bodyguards parted to let in a large, well-dressed Colt with a big mustache hanging under a large nose that supported a pair of pince-nez glasses.
Oh, come now. Since you're our Royal Engineer, I told you to call me JP.
The Royal Engineer walked up and bent over to casually shake the hoof of one of Equestria's richest citizens. JP Mustang. Financier, investor, property magnate, and more. Oh, sorry JP. Old habits die hard.
They certainly do. But that's why you're here, after all. To kill off some old habits.
Anonymous smiled and beckoned towards the pair of club chairs set next to each other, and the two of them stepped away from the doorway. Without even looking in her direction, JP Mustang's escorts closed the doors and imposed themselves in front of and beside them. Honor was forced to take a position further off to one side. I prefer to think of it as introducing new ones, JP.
Call it as you please, Anon. Either way, it's an exciting prospect for the future.
Anonymous offered a glass of water to the pony, who owned a sizable chunk of the whole country, pouring it himself from the carafe on one of the end tables. JP took it with a smile, sat down in the left chair before pulling out a cigar from a vest pocket and placing it in his mouth. As Anonymous sat down beside him, the financier started to fish around in his pocket for some matches, before stopping embarrassed.
Oh, I forgot. You asked me not to smoke in here, didn't you?
Well, I don't want to deny you your creature comforts, JP, but I'd appreciate it. JP grinned with his teeth, and batted a hoof in the air.
Oh, well, it tastes fine on lids. And anyways, I'm just stopping in for a quick visit, so you won't be denying me for very long.
His laugh was quick and brusque, more of a ha-ha than a ha-ha. Anonymous just smiled and leaned back in the chair, folding his hands. So, what business brings you to Candlelight this weekend? The Colt chewed on the cigar a bit. Holding it in his mouth made his Manhattan straight accent sound more like an Appaloosa drawl.
Business itself, that's all. There's deals to be made and papers to be signed that can't be done over in Manhattan, and sometimes you just have to go to the head of matters.
Leaning back, he pulled the cigar out of his mouth and licked his lips.
But there is something I wanted to bring up with you. It's about Galloway Bitsmount.
He paused briefly, watching Anonymous's reaction.
I understand you paid him a little visit yesterday.
The Royal Engineer unfolded his hands. When I heard about the mine collapse, I decided to make an inspection, yes. JP put the cigar back in his mouth.
Don't mince words with me, son. You did more than just inspect.
Honor's VIP rubbed his hands together, his elbows on his knees. Well, when I determined that he wasn't following standards for safe mine operation, I served him with a warrant to show himself at day court. It was a long pause. JP Mustang turned the cigar over, moving it to the other side of his mouth. Finally, he took a deep breath.
It's a real shame, you know? Risking pony lives trying to save some bits on timber. These young fellows sometimes.
JP Mustang closed his eyes and shook his head, leaning forward.
They think money amounts to everything in life. But it's the loss of life that counts. It is that frightful death.
He opened his eyes. Anonymous said nothing, so the Colt settled back into his chair again.
Look, I'm not here to tell you that he's innocent, but he is a friend of mine. And since you are too, I'm here to ask you to give him a second chance.
Anonymous rubbed his chin. JP, he's been treating the Equestrian Rescue Wonderbirds as his private cleanup squad for so long, they considered stationing a permanent detachment in Bitsmount Town. And he could have gotten some pony killed with his bit pinching. The financier raised his eyebrows and pulled a cigar out of his mouth to point at Anonymous with it.
I know that, and he knows it too,
came his brusque reply. Replacing the cigar, he composed himself once more and spoke evenly.
Believe me, you got him right and proper when you served him with that warrant. He wrote me a letter that sounded like he was gonna burst into tears, so I'm not here to get him off the hook, Anon. I'm just here to ask you to hoof over his correction to me.
JP put one hoof to his chest.
You know I don't care much for the public stage. Well, he's the same way, and I can appreciate what it means to him. So if you can keep him out of day court, then I'll make sure that there's never another incident at Bitsmount Mine.
Anonymous sighed and shook his head. I can't, JP. That warrant really did come directly from Her Majesty. If he doesn't show up, then she'll ask me if his mine is alright after all, and what will I tell Her Royal Majesty then? The Colt raised his eyebrows and his voice.
I'm not suggesting that you lie to Equestria's Divine Ruler, Anonymous. Go ahead and tell Her Royal Majesty that Bitsmount is a scoundrel. I'm just asking that you do it in private, rather than let him be dragged through the mud. Believe me, I'm going to put some very tight reins on him for a long time. He'll be chomping at the bit.
The Royal Engineer gestured with his hands. But it's not just about punishment, JP. It's about sending a message. He's not the only mine owner who is doing this. He's just the one who is doing it the most flagrantly. Putting his misdeed out there in public tells any pony else trying to trade safety for bits that they'll be facing real consequences. When we start getting steel production up, there are going to be hundreds of mines opening up across Equestria. Hundreds of would-be Galloway bits mounts thinking about cutting corners in order to cut out their competition. We've got to stamp it early and hard. Staring at the Royal Engineer, JP Mustang licked his lips, shifted a cigar around, and chewed on it for a few tense moments. It's good to see Anonymous stuck with his word, because loyalty is a decently hard thing to get. Now let's get on to our clever donators. Top donators: TacoCat598, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, Gauntlet, and Only One Thing. Zar630, Strix, Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Drake Lovedragon, Pastel Skies, Austin Roland, Crazy Killer 557, Stu Hex, Dospo, Madman Stan, Delta Omega, Jack Hedge, Runescythe 9852, Hudson Norman, Stephen Bingham, Line God 12, Dash of Evergreen, Rhiny Dragonwolf, Ponyman, Talrasha, The Toilet Snake, Sword Brother Mordred, Ronin Wandering, Runner Person Man Guy, Easy, Skyuchia, Leslie Prickett, Jordan Peterson, Crimson Kit 99, Lightskin, Monster Kitty, Needs a Life, Mon Bihanek, Lightning Cheese, and many more royal people. Thank you all very much for watching this video, and live life to the fullest.